Hello again, this is Leslie Garcia from the Thriving Between the Lines podcast, and I'm still very impatiently waiting for my dear friend Meka to come back from America. I miss you, Meka. I can't do this podcast without him. I love him too much. But while we were waiting for him to get back, I wanted to pop in another previously unpublished footnote from way back when we were just starting our podcasting adventure together. And this one is of me basically just ranting about a very important topic that not enough people consider, especially in the context of relationships as they're presented in personal development writing typically. So, have a listen and enjoy! All right, this footnote is about toxic monogamy and interacting with members of the opposite sex. Now, in the episode on No Excuses by Brian Tracy, we talked about the part where he insists that for people who are married, that it's simply not okay to engage with members of the quote-unquote opposite sex unless it's for the purpose of business. Now, this part really ticks me off for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's that expression, the opposite sex. Like, I know what it means. We understand what it means. But way too many people throw that expression around when they're talking about romantic partner attraction as if it's a standard. Well, here's a little reminder for y'all. Gay people exist. Lesbians exist. Pansexual people like me exist. Not everyone is looking for a romantic partner of the opposite sex or gender. And to suggest that, men and women are opposites, that brings up some other issues. It really taps into those strict gender norms that underpin so much of personal development media. Secondly, this is the part where I talk about toxic monogamy. Yeah. Some of you may not have heard that expression before, but if you operate in polyamorous circles, as I do and as Meka does, this is something that does come up a lot. Yeah. Have you ever noticed how often extremely toxic behaviors are forgiven just because they're happening within a monogamous relationship? That's toxic monogamy. Monogamy on its own is fine. Some people thrive in monogamous pairings. It is what they choose. It's what they love and they enjoy. And that's great. But it's when those romantic behaviors within the relationship cross the line into very damaging behaviors that it becomes very not okay. So, here are some examples of what I'm talking about. It's things like when your work or when your partner has work colleagues that they are friendly with, forbidding them from interacting with work colleagues of the opposite sex because it makes you jealous. And jealousy is bad. That's toxic monogamy. Jealousy isn't a bad thing. It's just a normal human response. It's how you respond to that jealousy that can be very damaging if you're not careful. Another example of toxic monogamy is insisting on knowing your partner's passwords to things like their email, their phone, their social media, because if they've got nothing to hide, then what's the problem, right? It is a problem because people still have a right to their own thoughts, feelings, and so on that they don't have to reveal to anyone else just because they happen to be in a relationship with them. It's basic human rights. I mean, how many times do we see and hear when people find something on their partner's phone, for example, and it could be something totally innocent, but they've written this whole story in their head about what's really going on behind their back, and it causes all of this needless tension, sometimes violence, because of something that they have completely misinterpreted. That's not okay. These are things that are worth avoiding by just communicating. Anyway, another example of toxic monogamy is when people will restrict their partner from spending time with friends who are their preferred gender because it makes them feel really insecure. And they feel like they might lose this person. That's potentially cutting them off from some very nurturing connections and very important sources of support. And it makes it that much harder for people to thrive within their own right if there's someone else pulling the strings behind them saying like, I don't know, that friend of yours, that there's something about them that triggers my insecurities. So for the sake of our relationship, because our relationship is the thing that matters most in the whole entire universe, I'm not going to allow you. I'm going to give you a rule that you can't interact with that person. Or, you know what? You can spend time with this person, but not this person, because this person is just a little bit too attractive. And I think they get a little flirty with you. So, you know what? Just don't talk to them. Let's just make that a rule. I'm giving you this rule that you can't talk to this person. Yay! Our relationship is now protected. That is toxic monogamy. The overarching issue is when people engage in these behaviors for the sake of not triggering their own insecurities. They might do things that are just very abusive, physically or emotionally. It's not an excuse for treating your partner like a second-class citizen. And here's another reminder that jealousy is not, I repeat, not a measure for how much you love someone. There's this shitty belief that a lot of people have that if you don't get jealous when your partner gives attention or gets attention from someone else, that you somehow don't care whether or not you lose them. And that's just not true. And even beyond that, it's not enough to be jealous. You also need to make some big show of it, so the whole world knows how jealous you are and how much you care about this person. This human is mine. No one can take them away from me. No! It's not your partner's job to shield you from your own insecurities. Having insecurities is a natural human response. It's not something to be ashamed of, but it's also not something that you must avoid at all costs. If you find yourself worried that you're going to lose your partner because they might find someone they like better, you could take that as an opportunity to look inwards. What is it that you believe you are lacking? What is it that you think that person has that you don't have? Is this something that you wish to change within yourself? It could be. Get clear on what that is, and then take the necessary actions to change that thing within yourself. But let me be clear here. This doesn't apply in situations where your partner is actually an asshole. I'm not here to excuse gaslighting, okay? If your partner is acting a certain way because they know it will make you jealous, or if they are, in fact, cheating or thinking about cheating, that's a whole other conversation. One of the big issues that people tend to have with ethical non-monogamy, people who are really pro-monogamy, especially in a heteronormative sense, is that they feel like having another partner takes away from the core relationship that a couple may have. And it's only something that people do when their marriage is struggling. First of all, that is a very couple-centric perspective on non-monogamy, which again is a whole other discussion. But the truth is that healthy, ethical non-monogamy doesn't need to come from a place of lacking. It doesn't need to come from a place of desperation or hurt or pain or something to repair something that's broken. But monogamy sort of gets a pass. When something really crappy is happening in someone's relationship and they do all these things to try to preserve that relationship at all costs, to everything else, to their own sense of autonomy, to their partner's sense of freedom to just become the person they want to become. And it's like, well, that's the standard script because all is fair in love and monogamy. It's not. And we need to just get over that entire narrative. And again, I am not anti-monogamy. Monogamy is a valid way of relating romantically to people. For some people, it is beautiful, it's wonderful, but it's when this idea is forced to the point where toxic behaviors are not only normalized, but encouraged. That is what I'm against. That is toxic monogamy. And it gets romanticized so much. Look at a lot of romance writing or, films and TV and all of that they'll show, like, typically a man wants this woman, starts stalking this woman, doesn't take no for an answer, love bombs her half to death until she gives in. And, like, I don't even have to mention a specific name of a film or a book or a movie here because it's the plot of so many things. And that's considered romantic. But it's not romantic. It's really gross. It's sending this message that, like, I'm going after what I want. I'm going to win this person over. I'm going to sabotage their relationships. I'm going to damage their friendships because I need to get what I want, which is divine monogamy. So anything I do to get that is okay. When someone commits murder because of jealousy, that this person is going to steal their partner, that's called a crime of passion. One example of a crime of passion. Like, no, that's just murder. There's nothing romantic about it. People getting into fights to win someone over or to defend someone's honor. That's not romantic. That is toxic. And when people say, like, oh, no, it's because I love you. It's because I love you. It's because I want to protect our relationship. It's just so that we can stay safe. It's so our relationship doesn't fall apart. It's like, you're gonna tear your relationship apart if you think that kind of behavior is okay. And just to recap, I want to reread the part from the book that I'm actually referring to here. So on page 253 in the section called, Self-Discipline and the Good Life, where he writes about faithfulness, he says, first, make a decision in advance that you will never be unfaithful to your spouse, like drawing a line in the sand. Make the decision in advance that no matter what happens, you will not stray for any reason. Again, that is fine. If your agreement is one of monogamy, and like that's okay to say, I'm not going to cheat on you. You're not going to cheat on me. And that's going to be great. But here we go. Second, discipline yourself to stay out of harm's way. Refuse to go anywhere or do anything where temptation may exist, except when essential for business purposes. Because in the end, business and money are all that matter, right? Avoid having lunch, drinks, or dinner alone with a member of the opposite sex. Brian Tracy does not recognize that gay people exist at all. I mean, read the book and you'll see it for yourself. Remember, there is safety in crowds. So here's the next section that we didn't read aloud in the episode, and where things get particularly toxic. Continually imagine everywhere you go and everything you do that your spouse is standing right next to you, watching and listening to what you say and do. Imagine that anything and everything you do, no matter where you are, is going to be reported back to your spouse within 24 hours. Use your discipline and willpower to build and maintain a reputation for being a completely honest and faithful spouse. Okay, on the surface, that may seem like you're just being respectful to your partner and you're showing that respect through your actions. But if you really dive into that paragraph, it's saying that you're supposed to act like you're under surveillance. Like anything you say is going to get back to your spouse. And that's fine, because you don't have a right to privacy. You don't have a right to just engage authentically with people without those actions being potentially misconstrued as being unfaithful. God forbid you smile in a conversation with someone who someone may think you would be attracted to, because that means that you want to screw them. That is toxic monogamy. A healthier form of monogamy would be to understand that you've clearly outlined your agreements and expectations with your partner. You have clearly defined what you consider cheating or being unfaithful, what you consider the most basic forms of respect on your terms as a pair, and not just what society reckons is acceptable. And that you check in with each other about these things, that you don't have to hide who you're interacting with, who you're chatting with at lunchtime at work, things like that, because you trust each other. And that's also something that monogamous relationships can learn from polyamorous relationships. There's often this assumption that what's considered acceptable behavior or what's considered cheating is like the same for everyone. And it's usually when that boundary is crossed that you start fighting over things by assuming that they're obvious. You might start having fights that start with, well, obviously that's not okay. Obviously going to lunch with Shayla at work is not okay. Obviously, people are going to find that disrespectful, and it's going to make me look like a fool. It's like, obviously, anytime you start with obviously, anytime you start a fight or an argument with obviously, that's a pretty decent indicator that you've skipped something really important in your initial conversations when you got together with your partner. And let's not do that. If we're going to engage, and again, this is coming from someone who is very openly polyamorous, if you're going to engage in a monogamous relationship in a healthy form, you need to communicate in such a way that builds trust between you and your partner, that you will undertake the agreed upon actions, that you have agreed upon boundaries, and that you have clearly defined what is and is not cheating within your relationship. Not doing everything you can to avoid temptation, because temptation isn't an automatic flag that something is going to happen. That's out of the bounds of your relationship. Communicate. All right? let's not leave things up to assumption in any kind of relationship, whether that's a romantic relationship, a professional relationship, a friendship, or a family relationship. All right? Okay. Thanks. Bye. Whew. Well, that was another doozy. So, have you heard the expression toxic monogamy before today? If not, I hope it awaked a different kind of thinking within you, especially when it comes to jealousy and insecurity in relationships. And speaking of jealousy and insecurity, this is something that I do work on with clients a lot. People in ethically non-monogamous relationships and people in monogamous relationships as well. So, what can you learn from your jealousy and insecurity? We can talk about these things, so hit me up, leslievcoaching.com. You can book a free introductory life coaching consultation with me here in my office in Brisbane or online via Zoom. Thank you, technology. Send me a message, send us some love, follow me on Instagram at leslievcoaching, and I'll see you next time, or talk at you next time. Ciao.